You again, you keep turning up, yeah. I only lived on the road from you, mate. Welcome to Hut 9, the last remaining building of the prisoner of war camp in Bridgend. Has anybody been in this building before?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Many times.
Anybody stolen bits out here over the years? Well, I have, okay? I, along with some of the other guys on the group, have been pillaging this site for a long, long time, most of which I've been able to dig out of my attic now and bring back here to put on display. This hut was saved by a chap working on the council called Neil Sumner. When the politics deemed it necessary to destroy the rest of Island Farm camp, and I will use the word destroy, it was destroyed, Neil decided he needed to do something to protect this. It is a Grade 2 listed building. We do have bats in residence. We do have dormice kicking around as well. So thanks to Neil, the bats and the dormice, Hut 9 is here today as far as I'm concerned. Now unfortunately the bats prevent us from going into the exciting part of the hut. We can't go and see the spoil from the tunnel in the ablutions. We can't go and see the room where the tunnel started, okay? Future plans, if we can get the funding in place that we're going for, and the begging, if we can get that done, there's even talk of building another building in the flight path of the bats. So when they go out, it'll encourage them to go and roost in another building, and we'll seal this one up and we can open up the rest of it. But that's way down the line at the moment. So what Neil was able to do prior to the camp being destroyed was to get as much funding as he could from the council. Now I've been very critical of the council in the past, but I've got to say they've kept this building for us as far as I'm concerned. He arranged for getting the roof redone to seal it up because it was very damp in here. He managed to get all the window frames put back in. He even procured glass for them to put them back in. Unfortunately, we invited the vandal element to come along and smash all the glass. So a lot of the glass we did have in here is long gone. That being said, we've got the steel shutters put up then, which protects this place from the vandals and also protects the bats. God bless the bats. We do have a Batman that comes down. We do call him the Batman, and he checks on the health and well-being of the bats in it because they are protected. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. They help us, but they hurt us.
Excuse me, Richard.
Yes, sir.
You got a couple of VIPs here. They stopped them. They were on the way back from a shot. They heard about it. Fire service.
Okay then. Okay then. Well, I'll continue on anyway. Come in, boys, if you want to. So, as far as protection is concerned, that's where the council stopped, basically. Okay. They had the fence erected around here to try and keep the vandals out. Unfortunately, they still broke in. They smashed all the roof vents that we had remade that was sitting on the top. They were all tipped over and smashed, so we don't actually have them on anymore. They are stored further down the way. What Neil also did was took absolutely all the little things, the fixtures, fit-ins. They are here, so we can actually restore this if we wanted to look what it looked like in about 1944-45. We don't want to. We want to be able to show it as it is at the moment with a couple of rooms done out. The other thing that Neil did was these paintings. Island Farm is very famous for its paintings, as well as the escape, as well as this, as well as that. It's a great place. In about 1986, Neil arranged for a preservation group that dealt predominantly with the Air Force wall art on the US bomber bases in the UK, where they'd go along, they'll cut out the walls with the artwork drawn onto them. Some of them would be shipped back to the States as well. So on one weekend, these chaps came down here, put a wooden frame on the back, wooden frame on the front, screwed them all together and disc cut the walls out. We've only got we've only got the one building left here, but as you can see, there were loads of buildings all around here, all adorned with these beautifully well-drawn pictures, paintings, so on. So these were taken away, they were put in storage. They ended up in the pavilion in Porthcawl for several years in the basement. How in God's name they got that in the basement, I do not know. But I think there was a couple of ruptured hernias. They went then in storage with the council into a steel container and got lost for a bit in one of the council yards in the area. Luckily somebody knew where they were and they turned up, and the council brought them back last year for us, and they're actually dotted around in some of the other rooms now. There's a few bits and pieces of wall art on the existing walls here, but the rest of the drawings you see have come from elsewhere in the camp before it was demolished. When it was demolished in 1991, it was very unceremonious to say the least. So a contractor came in, basically drove their JCB or whatever they had into the end of the hut, bearing in mind these are all prefabricated, and toppled them all over. They then got rid of what was left of the rubble, took it to a big masher in the middle of the compound, and there's a massive mound of rubble over there which used to be the rest of the prisoner of war camp. It is quite sad. We have been through with metal detectors and trying to get as much as we can, but there's very, very little left here now. We're very lucky yesterday. What's become very evident from the 2 days that we've been here is how much stuff people have actually got, whether it's material from the camp, photographs, stories, and one thing and another. There's one chap that's got about 25 boxes worth of junk that he's liberated from here over the years. From Bridgend creamery bottles with the old cardboard press top in them, Bovril bottles, jars, things like that, from everyday items that we used here as prisoner of war camp. We know this stuff is out there and that's become very evident. What we want to do now as a preservation group is to pull it all together, protect this building for years to come and build a museum in Bridgend. Now, Bridgend doesn't have a museum. Bridgend was home to one of the largest munitions factories in the United Kingdom. 40,000 people work there. 10,000 people on 2 shift changes every single day. That's the whole population of a town moving in this area. But we've got nothing to commemorate that at all. This is all that's left that was built for the ordnance factory. We've got to look after it. The tunnel itself has been scheduled for preservation. Yes, a hole in the ground has been preserved. They can't do anything with that. It's still there. Did anybody watch the Country File programme? Yeah? It was superb to see the tunnel as it was. Never seen a tunnel before, and we could see in 3 dimensions. We're running the film show down the bottom end there, if anybody wants to see it. And it's really good to see the recreation of the tunnel going through it all. My personal interest started this as a young boy when I was 9, 10 years of age. When my father used to bring me down here with my Uncle Selwyn, and we used to go around taking photographs, and I always wondered what it was. There was very little written. Come Out Wherever You Are was a book that was only a few years old at the time and wasn't very well known. Herbert Williams did a grand job telling the story, but again, as far as I'm concerned, this is where the Great Escape happened, not in Stalingrad 3. It was the Germans getting out of our little place in Bridgend. So its history was never really sort of, looked after, especially with the arsenal. In one of the rooms further down, I've actually gathered together as many aerial photographs and maps and one thing and another showing the extent of the arsenal in Bridgend. It's incomprehensible how big it was. 3 sites around Bridgend. If you look at an aerial photograph of Bridgend during World War II, the ordnance factories were bigger than Bridgend town itself. It was massive. Hundreds of miles of Great Western Railway laid down here. Sidings that would have beat the Coitney sidings hands down. Tone bus station, cooling towers were all down there providing the steam for working down here. There were steam engines, there were diesel electric engines all rushing around the ordnance factory in Bridgend, taking the munitions up to Brackla, putting them under the 8Xs, the Royal Navy coming with a lorry offloading the munitions. All this was going on during World War II, and very few people know that used to happen in Bridgend because there is nothing yet to tell them that. We need to make this the centrepiece of our museum in Bridgend and tell personal stories of people who lived, worked and died in Bridgend. There's a couple of blast walls left on Bridgend Industrial Estate that shows where the factory used to be. There's a couple of derelict buildings up on the Brackla Industrial Estate that shows where the factory used to be. And this is all that's left of the hostel. I don't know if Brett covered it, but this was one of 3 hostels built in Bridgend, and that comes as a surprise to a lot of people. Pencoed there was one, there was another one in Bryn Tirion. Again, we are all volunteers here. We do this out of the love of Island Farm, Hut 9 and all the other stuff. The reason why we look so good, thank you, is that we are all World War II living historians by our hobby. We do this as often as we can. What happened was, the year before last, the first time that the local council decided to open this, is they asked us if we'd like to come along and populate the hut to make it look, bring it to life for them. Yeah, why not? We all know Hut 9, we know Island Farm. And it was a bit of a success. Second year, last year when we did it again, was even more, and a lot of the boys came down. So after last year's event, the 3 guys on the council, Claire, Sue and Wendy, asked us if we'd make up the core of a preservation group, a group of volunteers, to bring this back to life, to help preserve it, to go through the funding, and we jumped at it. I've been involved with Island Farm for 30 odd years. Brett's been involved for donkey's years as well, and we thought, what better than having our own place in Bridgend. So we actually meet every month to discuss the future. We talk about discussing funding from Camelot, we talk about CADU, we talk about everything else. That is going through. This weekend, we're gathering as many statistics we can of the people who are here and the feedback, so we can go back to Camelot and say, right, you need to fund us, we can build a museum in Bridgend, we can preserve this, because this building is unique, absolutely unique. It was the largest mass breakout of any German POWs during World War II, and it happened just at the end of this building. How cool is that? Absolutely fantastic. Let's remember the ordnance factory in Bridgend. It took until 2009 for a memorial to go up in Bridgend to the workers who lost their lives in Bridgend. Has anybody seen it in Bridgend? There's a granite plinth with the names of the cross bombs of the ROF in Bridgend. So if you stand with the post office behind you and you've got the cenotaph, if you go towards your right, as if you're going over the old Embassy Bridge, another part of Bridgend that was eradicated by politics, you will see a large granite plinth there with a beautiful marble list of names on it of the people who lost their lives in Bridgend. That went up in 2009. And as a living historian, myself and the rest of my living historian groups were asked to be the Guard of Honour there, so that was really good for us, because we represent the Home Guard that were based in the Ordnance Factory, GLN 23. Yes, they had their own Guard, their own Home Guard battalion as well. It wasn't Dad's army down there. We knew they had Bren guns, they had number 4s, they had cannons, they had everything down there. They had to defend this ordnance factory in case the Germans landed. I don't know if anybody has seen the pillboxes that go all the way around Brackwell. Yeah, up on top of Brackwell Hill, ringed by pillboxes. 2 massive reservoirs up on top of Brackwell. They were part of the ordnance factory. Everywhere you go, there's still little bits left. What we want to do is we want to capture all that information and tell a story for those that come after us. So the visions we've got, we want a classroom here, we want to bring the school children down here, we want to educate them about Bridgend's part in World War II. It's all very well known about 39, 45, who the bad guys got and who the good guys got. So whose grandmother was worked in there, whose auntie worked in there, whose uncle was in the Home Guard in Bridgend. These are all important things. We want to visit a centre here, we can come down. These have all been donated to us. The electricity wires have been donated by a local company. The generator was loaned to us for the weekend. All this has come out of our own pockets and people who've heard about it. I know, damn well know that the passion and the interest is here, because you're about the 900 people we've had through here this weekend so far. It's been phenomenal. The amount of money we've raised through donations as well is unquantifiable, so thank you all very much, I've got to say, for what you're going to do. See what I did there? So what I've done here, in these 2 cases, you'll all have a chance to mingle through, because the original plan was for me to give you a guided tour in groups of 8 or 10, but sorry, there's just too many of you. So you're going to have free reign in a minute. So if I just talk about a couple of bits that we've pulled together in here, the very famous clay balls up there, that Brett told you about, that were compressed and hidden behind the false wall. We've got a selection of them up there. You'll see a paraffin lamp there that was found outside one of the guardhouses. I found that about 30 years ago, with a blue glass over it, obviously to restrict the light, because of course you needed a light in the area, but of course you didn't want the damn Luftwaffe bombing you either. There's a pair of dodgy looking Wellington boots there. They actually belong to a U-boat officer. Back in the day when nobody cared about Island Farm, I would come down here with my US Army shovel dated 1944 and I would dig anything, to find something. At that time, the wall had collapsed that had all the spoil behind it, and it was all spewed all over the ablutions floor, so I dug through all of that. I had to find something, and I found a pair of boots in there. So as a young lad, backpack on my back, got on a bus, went to London, went to the Pure War Museum, spoke to a chap called Robert Jackson, who was head of exhibits at the time. We identified they do belong to a German U-boat officer. They have been cut down for wearing the shoes around the camp. The reason why they were discarded is they've got holes in the bottom of them, so they're obviously worn out. In amongst the soil that I found as well, there's a large selection of bits of wood down there. Now they are belonging to one of the bunk beds that were here, and we believe that they were the tools used to actually make the wall, the false wall. One of them has got a handle fashioned on the end of it, obviously with a knife or something like that. So we wondered why it's been discarded when obviously wood for a tunnel was so important, but we believe they were the tools that were made at the time. You never know, they could have been interrupted and they just chucked them over the wall and just left them there. Don't know. Lots of examples of light switches and one thing and another, and coat hangers and coat hooks, and this is just a small portion of what we've managed to save. But we want to bring this back to Hut and show it off to everybody. We brought bits of our own private collections here as well. You know, we've got a lot of range of German gear over here, and some of the doctor's stuff with his helmets and weapons, just to illustrate a bit. Again, we've been promised full-size mannequin dressed in uniforms and everything to come down here, long-term loan, so we can get a proper museum in here. What I've done further down is I've set up one of the room to look like a cell for a POW. I made bunk beds to go up in there. My wife thinks I'm absolutely insane, because after a full day's work, I'm going now, I'm going to make some bunk beds in a prisoner of war camp. So we've set Barry up in there, who's one of my reenacting friends, and he'll tell you a bit about life in the camp as a POW, show you his escape equipment and all the stuff he's making to break out. I've set the one room for the ROF. We've managed to procure through the organisation, again through voluntary, us putting up the cash, bib and brace set, boots, snood, things like that we use by the Royal Ordnance Factory workers. We've got that on show in there. But the one thing I have got in there, and have a good look at it, because I put a couple of datums on there, is how big the Ordnance Factory was. All of Bridgend Industrial Estate, all of Brackle Industrial Estate, all underneath Brackle Hill was all the Ordnance Factory, including this site, obviously. A lot of Americans here, unfortunately. Well, there you go. I've asked them for chocolate and nylons, but apparently they've eaten all the chocolate and they're wearing the nylons. Don't want to talk about that. So have a chat with the guys. They've got a lot of personal kit and equipment. The Yanks spend a lot of time here. And the one thing to remember, to a lot of those Americans, this was probably the last home or the last place they knew before they landed on Omaha and lost their lives. So this is quite a poignant place for them. As you go further down, as I've described, we've got a lot of junk in the rooms, but this is all the bits that we've managed to preserve from the rest of the POW camp that we can use to preserve it. If there's anything that you need to know, please ask. As I said, this was supposed to be a scripted tour for small groups, but there's millions of you, so I probably left out loads. But what I'd like you to go away with now is to stress the passion and the vision that we've got of having a museum in Bridgend, and this will be our centrepiece. That you can still come in, you can still look at it, you can still smell what it's like in here, and we can tell the history and the story of all those people who lived, worked and died in Bridgend, in our town. And if we can get the money together, you've got a core of 6 or 7 people who are absolutely passionate about this. So, you know, please enjoy it. You will get covered in dust. You will walk out with white all over you. If you haven't, we'll make you come back in and do it all again. Okay, so please, have a good look around. Come back to me, ask any questions. Jonathan is here somewhere, there's a couple of the other guys, but have a good look. Thank you very much for coming today.